Hi, welcome students. We're going to do another lab activity. This one is on capture, marking an animal, and recapturing that animal. It sounds confusing, but it's really not. Picture a very large population. Look over here. We've got a population of caribou. These herds can be in the numbers of hundreds of thousands. And you can actually sit on a hill and you can count the different caribou. You can count the ones that are more white, you can count the ones that are more brown. You can even capture, by looking just at the herd, the male and female population just by observing it and slowly marking things down. A penguin population is similar. It could be fairly easy to monitor and make observations because the penguins don't move that much except when they're feeding and jumping in the water. Population of panda can be a little bit more tricky because they're up in the canopy of the trees. But the difference would be with the panda, you have a fairly small population. With these penguins, especially the caribou, you have enormous population. Well, what about if you're trying to find out information on a population of fish where it's underwater, and you could go under there. I'm a scuba diver. I scuba dive, geez, I've been almost in all over the world. The only place I haven't been is Antarctica, and I want to go there. That's on my list to go. But what if you want to count a population of a specific type of fish, or a number of fish on a reef, or maybe fish at the base of a dam, and you want to find out the total population? That could be a little bit more tricky, and that's where this comes in. This is called capturing, marking, and recapture activity or lab experiment. And what we're going to do is picture this right here. This is a population of mice. And if you were to one evening take a sampling of these mice, and you grabbed a whole bunch of mice, and you probably, let's just throw out a number, grabbed 100 mice. And if you put a permanent mark, and they do this, they put a permanent mark on the back or on the tail with a permanent ink marker, and then they release those 100 mice back into the population. And then the next night, they grab mice again. And they're going to grab 100 mice again, approximately. And in that, so here's the mice grabbed again. This is sampling 1, sampling 2. But here you notice you only have 2 of the original marked mice. So if you grab 100 mice the second night and you only have 2 that are marked, then that's giving an indication that your population is massive. But let's say that you do the same type of experiment and you grab 12 squirrels, because there aren't as many squirrels in a little forested area, and you grab 12 squirrels, and you mark them all, and the next night you grab 12 again, but you recapture 9 of those squirrels. Well, then you know you're close to that original number that you had in that original capture. So that means the population is fairly small. Again, pay attention. It was 9 out of 12 and 2 out of 100. So the populations, you can see, we can begin to estimate the size. And if we do this over and over, and during this lab, what you're going to do is you're going to do this experiment 20 different times. We're going to use beans or beads. I'm going to show you some different things that you could use. And you're going to do it 20 different times. And mathematically, you can come up with almost exactly the correct population. In my population, I had a bunch of macaroni. And I estimated when I looked at it, now this doesn't have all of them in there, Mine was up a little bit higher. I estimated there was about 200 pieces of macaroni in there. And my mathematical thing after doing this lab experiment came to 241. So I was off visually looking at it, but it came to 241. But interesting, when I actually counted my entire population, it came to 248. So my mathematical estimation was really close based on this lab that I'm going to show you how to do it. It's really quite easy, and the math is pretty simple as well. The only thing is, we're not going to, during this particular lab, I'm not going to take you to the total, having you calculate the total number, because that's another step. And right now I just want you to gather your data, and then I want you to physically count how many are in there, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I wanted to show you another one here. So here's a sampling of some lions, and here's the total population. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That sounds about right. Turtles, it's a little harder to capture those. So in this sampling, they only got 1. Rabbits, they were able to get 3. All right, come on over here. So what you're going to do is the lab will ask you to use beads, like the beads on a necklace. And if you happen to have, it's going to say specifically red beads and white beads. If you have beads, use them. I didn't have any beads in my home. I was thinking of using M&Ms, but the problem with the M&Ms, that would work too, but I would have to waste a lot of colored M&Ms to come up with about 200 M&Ms. Another thing you can do is, I used macaroni. And so here's the macaroni piece, and then when I captured it, I marked the macaroni, and I'll explain this a little bit later again. I marked it here, so that way I knew which ones I captured versus the original population. So you could use macaroni. Here was another one that I have. This is just some noodles that were colored, orange, I guess non-colored, and then green. These also work, so you would have, the original population, and then you could replace it, rather than marking it, you could replace it with your marked ones with a colored one. I didn't use these ones only because it was harder to get a larger population in one handful compared to when I was able to grab these. I was able to get a larger sampling from the total population, and so I just felt more comfortable with that. You could also use pinto beads. You can use any kind of item that you can mark and put a color to, that'll work. All right, so this is the sheet, and I have one that's filled out. Here I actually have 2 that are filled out. But here's what you're going to do. You're going to come over here. Come on over here and look at this sheet. And you're going to mark your initial marked beans right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a handful from your original population. This is your original population. You're going to take a handful, you're going to place them down on the table like this, and you're going to take a marker, and you're going to, where's my blue marker? You're going to take a marker, and you're going to just simply mark it like this. Now, it's advisable to actually do it on both sides like this, because what happens when you pull it out and it lays down on the ground and it happens to be upside down and you don't see it, you might mismark it or misrepresent it or just not notice it. All right, so you're going to mark all of those, and then once you get them all marked, you're going to take them and you're going to throw them back in. So this is just an estimate, about the same as right there. Okay, so just pretend I just marked all of those. Then you're going to throw it back into your original population. So now you're going to see the marked ones are on top and the other population is down at the bottom. Well, you don't want them to just be sitting at the top and re-grabbing it like that, because that would give a misrepresentation that you're getting a sampling of all of your marked ones. So what you're going to do is you're going to have another cup, and you're just going to kind of mix it like this. Now, I actually found personally, I like doing it this way. I got rid of the cup. The instructions are going to tell you to use 2 cups and do it that way. I found this just easier for me to do this. Now watch. I am going to take a sampling again. So, come here, look at this piece of paper. So my original handful was 41 pieces that I marked. Then this one, this is going to be my first lab experiment. I'm going to take a handful. You're gonna try to stay consistent with the same amount of handful. I originally tried to do it so that my fingers came together into my thumb area right here, but I stopped doing that because I felt like the numbers were too small. So I'm just taking a big handful like this. I throw them down onto a plate. For me, was more functional because I was able to separate them. So now you can see my marked ones, my original ones that I captured. So remember, this is called capture, mark, and recaptured. Now I'm recapturing those animals. So let's say these are fish. I don't have to swim underwater and count the entire population. I'm only swimming underwater, grabbing a small sampling, and I'm going to now estimate the total population. Again, what I'm trying to estimate is this total number here. So watch. So now I'm going to count these. This is the original. So this is the total population that's not marked. So I'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, and then 29. Now I would mark down 29 right here. Now notice sometimes my handful was 48, sometimes it was 27, sometimes it was 37. It kind of varies. Your handfuls aren't going to be the same, but now I'm going to count what I captured or recaptured. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. And I'm going to write that right here, 9. So you can see my samples here are 8, 5, 6, 5. And I'm going to continue to do that over and over and over for 20 times. Look down here again. There's a total of 20 samplings. Once I get done with that 20 samplings, what you're going to do, and don't get nervous on this math, it's really not that hard. It's just looking at averages. You're going to add all of these together. And when I added it all together, it came to 146. I'm going to divide 146 by 20 because I have 20 samplings. So I'm going to come up with my average. My average is 7.3. I like to use the 0.3. You can just average it to 7 if you're more comfortable with that. So the average recapture is 7 of my total population. This is my total sampling of the population. I'm going to add all of this up all the way down. I personally got 764. Remember, yours will be a little different. And then I divided it by 20 because, again, I have 20 samplings that I'm taking. And my total capture was 38 each time. Okay, so what you're going to do is take your original marked. You're going to have to do this each time for 20 total measurements. You're going to take your marked, which is 8 here, and the total captured, that would be the total in my handful of this total, which is 48. 8 of them were marked, which is actually 16%. So it's coming up with a percentage, 16% of what I polled are marked blue. when I then take that number and add it up all the way down, and once again, I'm going to divide it, you can see here by the 20, because I have 20 samplings. My total each time, an estimate of my total mark that I grab each time in a handful is going to be 20, approximately 19, almost 20% of it will be from the original mark. And then what I'm going to do, now there's going to be another step, and we're not going to do this in this lab because I don't want to get into the math on that. It's a little bit more complicated, but I do have inside the homework, it will have an explanation how to go to the next stage. The next stage will take this, and then you're going to calculate the entire population. That would be this entire amount. If you remember, I visually estimated 200, and then the math showed that there was 248 pieces. No, the math showed 241. When I physically counted them, there was 248. So the math came pretty close to it. But all I want you to do, here are the steps in this lab. I want you to completely fill this out, come up with this measurement. I want to come up to see that your averages should still come in around 20%, similar to mine. That's what I'm going to be looking for over here. If it's 16, 18, 22, we're okay there. But if you're coming up with a 1 or 2%, there's a problem, okay? So I'm going to be looking at this lab sheet. What you're going to do is you're going to fill it out. Don't print it and make your own copy and fill it out with a pencil. I want you to use the one you can do that. You'll just have to then upload it. You're going to have to scan it, upload it into Google Classroom and send it to me. It's easier if you just use the one that's in there. I've created a document that you can alter and then just type in each number. You can then use a calculator to figure out the different percentages. Okay, so make sure then when you're completed with that, there's going to be a button right up here in Google Classroom that says submit. Submit that to me. Another thing that I want you to do is I want you to do this. I want you to do a drawing that's going to estimate everything. And I'm going to show you how to do this here in a second. But essentially, the marked was 7. The samples were 38. The total population was 241. And I had this student write down all of the marked ones. So if you look at the blue, there's 7 that are spread around. And then the samplings are 38. There's going to be 38 purple fish. These are little fish. But the total number comes to 241. This will help you to be able to visualize what we're talking about. This is the total population of the fish in this area of the lake or the ocean. And what we're sampling is these. You can see the purple ones are the sample averages. And then the marked ones are that original 7 that helps us to be able to calculate it. I also want you to do a written essay, and you've done this every week so far. It's basically 500 words to 750 words, but in that I want to make sure that you're using your vocabulary. Some of the vocabulary that we've been talking about in this video, we have capture, mark or marking, recapture, environment, tracking, species, migration. We haven't talked about migration, and this is where this is interesting, is as these populations move from one location to another, we can actually measure what's left or what's moving. And then, of course, the word sample. So I want you to make sure that you're using those academic words in your writing. And then I want you to also use correct sentence structure and make sure that your grammar is solid. I'll be looking at that. All right, so come on over here. Let me get a piece of paper. I'm going to have students start working on some of this. Okay, what I want you to do is to take your own piece of paper right there, and I want you to start doing the samples that I showed you.
Okay, I'm going to take this pencil. Do you want me to put these back, or?
Yeah, let's put that back into this one here. So here, do it from here. Let's just kind of take a handful here.
Okay.
Let's do your marking.
Can I get the...
Here, you could use... Well, yeah, do the back of it so you don't make messes.
Yeah. Okay. So
You know, better yet, let's do it on here. This form here is what your paper will look like on Google Classroom. That's your instructions. It'll have your materials and your procedures. Just go step by step all the way down on this. But do the back side of that.
Okay.
Because I don't want to mess up those papers.
So I took out a handful, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and mark both sides, correct? So mark on that side, mark on here, and then just put it down. And then do that for all of them.
I notice you're getting it on your fingers.
It washes off eventually.
You'll be fine. All right, we're not going to go all the way through, so go ahead and push that off to the side. Let's pretend that you marked all of them and poured them into here. Now I want you to show me how to actually fill this out.
Okay, so what you're going to do, I don't mark anymore, is you're going to grab a handful like I did just a little bit ago. Okay, that's a good size. And you're going to put it down. And in this sample, I can't show again.
You only have one.
I only got one. So I'm going to put the one right here. And then I'm going to count how many other ones I have. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30, 32. I'm going to put that here, 32. And then I'm going to put this all back in. And I want to make sure I mix it up real well so that I get a better sample size this time. And I stick my hand in, got another handful, and then you just do it over again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it looks like. So then I put 6 here and then count the rest. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So that one was a little smaller, but it's still good.
Let's have you do it one more time.
Okay. So we're gonna mix this up again. And then just grab another little handful.
Let me see your hand. Turn it over. Yeah, so is that consistent how you're doing it every time?
Yeah, there's sometimes little like air pocket like gaps in between, so it makes it seem bigger than it actually is. So we got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So about consistent with the one sample I got just a second ago. And then it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 29. Okay. So, assuming I just kept on doing this all the way down, what I would do after I have the entire list filled is you would pull out, you can use a calculator. I'm going to use my phone because I just have a calculator here. And you want to figure out what the percentage is of the numbers that you pulled out. So of your handful that you got, how many were marked? So what you're going to do in this example is you're just going to do the first one. So it's going to be 1 divided by 32. I'm just going to show you here. And then you're going to move the decimal over 2 spots. So it's going to be 3.1%.
Now, I personally, Madison,
Yeah.
Do it again.
What? That was not right.
I personally, when I would move it over, I like to leave at least one number behind the point. So if you look at mine,
Here's right here.
my numbers, I like to leave in the percentages, the 0.3. Let me see yours. You did not leave the point behind. And I'm okay. Oh, sometimes you actually did.
Actually, I did on all of them.
Yeah, you did actually. I'm okay either way, students. If you all do point, leave that there, or if you just average it up or down. Personally, I like to leave the number in there because I think it gives a little bit. It'll average up or down 1 total %. Where if you just estimate it, you kind of lose that little bit.
And
So,
when I do it, I tend to round the decimal to the nearest tenth placement. And so when you do that, make sure you're very consistent. Like, let's look at this next one.
why? What do you mean?
So I'll show it after this one. So 6 divided by 22. So here's an example where it's 22.2%, but because the next number is a 7, I would actually round it up to 22.3%.
Perfect. No,
and
that's
just make sure it's very consistent and you don't switch that up. So it's
perfect.
27.3%.
Because again, what happens if you don't do that, class? You're going to lose potentially an entire percentage point. We're looking at estimates and averages here, but I like to leave it there. But I'll take it either way. All right, keep going. Oh, you did 2 already. So what I want you to do now is let's do a sample of the drawing.
Okay, I can put it right here. So I'm gonna put that off to the side, and I'm gonna come over here and grab some colored pencils. So with mine, what I'm gonna do is very similar to this last drawing. I need to be able to see the numbers. Okay, so in this, I'm gonna make again the marked colors, the ones that had the blue marks on it. Is going to be the blue.
Are you going to do what kind of animal? Because class, you can do any kind of animal you want to do. You can do fish, birds. Just keep the symbol real simple. I'd rather you not do circles and squares. I want you to make some kind of animal. What kind of animal are you going to do?
I could just do fish.
Whatever you want to do.
Okay. So before I actually do this, I need to average out. Do you want me to just pick a sample? Or
No, do your
average
original
out?
piece of paper. Let's show your original piece of paper. The one that's completely done.
So that one is a sample I've already done before. And here at the bottom, if you want to zoom in, you can see how I got my answer. So the numbers I'm going to be doing here are going to be based off of this section right here. Okay? Well, not that. But so it's going to be 5.5, but I'm just going to round it to 6 because I like to round up. So for the fish that I'm going to do, I'm going to show a little sample. So the blue fish are going to be equal to 6. Okay, so there should be 6 fish out here that are blue. That's 2, 3, 4, 5.
And make sure that you
6.
spread them all over the page. Because if you put the little sampling too close, you're going to actually do a misrepresentation. So, looking at here at this population, you can see the total population, and we're taking the samples of the marked ones here, and then the samples of the animals that we're pulling or spread around. To me, this visualized much more realistic population of animals. If she were to clump them right here really close, you'll find students that it's just visually not as representation of a population.
Okay, so then the next color I'm going to do is the pink. And then pink is going to represent the average that I got for each handful. So when I pulled it out like this, and how many, what are these called? Macaroni noodles I got, I averaged that up to get 38. So each time I pulled, I got an average of 38 noodles in a handful. So the pink, I'm going to put down as 38. So then what I'm going to do is go through. Do you want me to do all 38? Yeah. So then 1, 2,
Nah, probably not. Let's
okay,
not do
that's
all
10.
30. That's just showing the distribution again, similar to what I did here. You can see how she's building it. All right, class, watch what she does next.
So the last number represents I have not actually done this yet. So the last number represents the total amount of noodles that is in the bowl. So that's like your total population. Even though each handful you're only looking at a small population, the total is everything that's within the bowl.
Yeah, again, mathematically we can figure it out, and that's going to be listed in another sheet of paper on the Google Classroom. But for most of you, I don't want you to do that in this lab. All I want you to do is literally pour it out. This here, let's get rid of these pieces here. Just pour it out onto a plate or onto the table and count them. Count the entire population. You don't we don't have time to do it right now during lab. But just start counting. What 2, 3, 4, till you get all the way through and so on. I got to 200 and I think it was 248 total in my population, and that's where then actually, I think I went ahead and did the mathematical number of 241, even though my actual population was 248. You can just go with the one that you count up, and make sure that there's 248 images. That doesn't sound right, but that there's illustrations of the total amount in your population.
And so then once you get that actual number, which I haven't done, you'll put it right here, and then you just start drawing the next group. So then just 1, 2, 3, 4, so on until you get the number that you actually counted up.
All right, so class, by the end of this lab, I want to be able to see, and one thing I don't think I mentioned was you need to be taking notes as you're doing this. That's always important, to be taking notes in your science journal. In your notes, you're going to be writing down your observations, and then why would you take notes, Madison? What would you use your notes for? The essay, I'll give you a hint.
The essay that you're going to be writing after.
Which is how many words?
250.
500 to 750 words. And so you'll use the things, your notes that you wrote down in your observations, your actual math numbers, all of that, and also your vocabulary words will be a part of your notes. You're going to have your definition of what recapture means, what sampling means, what population means, and then you'll use those definitions and vocabulary words in your writing. So you'll have your notes, a written exercise of 500, 750 words, this drawing. Now the drawing, you will have to either take a picture and email it to me. You can do that on your smartphone, or you're going to scan that. You can do that down at the school. If you go into the school, they'll let you scan it, and you can send it to me or put it into your Google Classroom. You're going to have your lab chart, which will already be in the Google Classroom. And then, here, let me give you back the phone. You're going to have your lab chart that will already be in the Google Classroom. Make sure, again, I would not print that off. And then you're going to submit it by the very top. You're going to hit submit. That's really important. A lot of your students aren't doing that. I just talked to a student yesterday. He's done all of this work, but he doesn't submit it. You got to make sure that you do it. And that's it. Have fun. And remember, what you're trying to visualize here is a total population. Look over here at my zombie. How many zombie bears do you think we're going to have in a population? Probably fairly small. That will be easy to measure. But caribou, where you have hundreds of thousands, we're going to just take some samples of the entire population. Excellent. See you next lab.